welcome. This is Najma Minhas with Global Village Space. Today we're looking at the startup space in Pakistan, which is essential for the economy to flourish and to take the 3 to 4 million new graduates that join the labor market every year. I'm joined by a co-founder for Daftarkhwan, Saad Idrees. Daftarkhwan is a co-working space company. And to learn much more about it, Saad, what does your company do?
So basically, Daftarkhwan is, like you said, a network of co-working spaces that's currently operating across 3 cities, 5 locations, and hosting more than 1,700 professionals on its premises on a daily basis.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that includes a lot of companies, a lot of startups, a lot of tech companies.
What is co-working space? Because when I thought about it, I was thinking that maybe you're renting out space for offices. Is that what you're doing?
So basically, the idea fundamentally is it's like a gym membership model for offices, right? Where teams can come in and they can have like dedicated, demarcated spaces for themselves and their teams. These can be team compounds, these can be entire floors, these can be, just a single individual seat across any of our facilities, or any permutation or combination of the same. So that's fundamentally the idea. But what makes it interesting and what makes it co-working rather than just office spaces is the idea of community, where you're kind of getting all of these people together, getting them connected to one another, and just figuring out and letting them figure out really what kind of value they can get from being part of that ecosystem. So where there's accountants and consultants and professionals and creative professionals and techies and social media marketeers all in the same place, and like lots of brilliant people, crazy things are bound to happen.
So what I was interested in understanding is, how did you come up with this idea? I mean, is this what inspired you? Was there a need? Did you start working somewhere and felt the need for this?
Yeah. So basically, we kind of developed this idea back in 2015, 2016. And 2016 is when we started. And at that point in time, there was a lot of activity happening in the startup space, especially in Lahore, but also in Karachi and Islamabad as well, where a lot of, the provincial government as well as the federal government was getting into setting up these different incubators and accelerators, which could help train and, kind of prime different startups and young people who had different business ideas and push them out into the market. Now, the complication there was that although there were a lot of these programs and a lot of startups that were graduating from these programs, they didn't really have any place to go. So the next step in the in that value chain was missing. So what that kind of ended up becoming was, because these young companies had very little cash to spend, and they didn't really have office spaces and infrastructure to go incorporate their companies, hire people, have clients over, have investors over. That's why it became like a vicious cycle that had to be cracked somehow. So fundamentally, we saw it as a cash flow problem, where we could, just kind of deploy some cash.
Well, I understand exactly what you're saying, because I know when we started our company 6 years ago, we started in our bedroom in our house. I mean, there was 1 bedroom upstairs, which we allocated, and then that became 2 bedrooms. And at some point, I had 10 men in my house, and I said to my husband, we need to get this company to another place. And one of the biggest issues we had was finding good space at a reasonable cost.
Exactly.
For a new company, this is one of the biggest issues.
Absolutely.
So what are you providing a new company? When a new company comes to you, what are the facilities that you're giving that they should come to you and use co-working space rather than find their own office? So
fundamentally, everything end-to-end other than their own computers and their own equipment. So like basically you walk in to a Daftarkhwan anywhere and you're all sorted. The management, the utilities, how you're powered, how you're connected, wired and everything. All of that is sorted, including the meeting rooms, huddle rooms, brainstorming spaces, discussion spaces, lounges, even like, the tea and coffee is on the house as well.
Oh, wow.
So like all of that is sorted. And the idea is just to kind of give entrepreneurs and founders that mental space and that physical space where they can come in and absolutely hassle-free start operating their business, really focus on their business and their growth and their innovation. Because, if you just kind of nurture that, if you nurture that innovative side of that entrepreneur or that founder, again, like, they're bound to scale and, take everyone along with them. And that's
and is
what
it
we've seen.
expensive? I mean, how reasonable is it for the average?
So actually, I mean, it would roughly cost you, if you walk into anywhere, it would roughly cost you, anywhere between 15 to 16,000 rupees per month for the whole thing. For a single individual seat.
How much space do I get for 15, 16?
So you get a workstation, but also you get, with that workstation, you get access to all of our common spaces as well. So like I said, we're completely, free to use, and they're kind of designed to attract all of these people together as well. You get the lounges and the huddle rooms and the waiting areas and the receptions. So, effectively you just have that workstation, but really you're a part of something very, very large, and you're a part of all of our
16,000 on average. So I'm not paying any bills on top of that. I'm not paying any other cost, no utility bill, no generator cost or anything.
Nothing at all,
just
unless you really, really want to. So unless you have any specialized computing equipment, unless you have servers, something very, very specialized that you want us to handle on your behalf, other than that, you're all covered.
You mentioned you're in 3 cities. I mean, which cities are these?
We're right now in Lahore, Islamabad, and Rawalpindi. So these are 5 locations, and initially we kind of came to Islamabad to set up one location, but again the demand here in the capital was so high that we ended up simultaneously actually opening up 2 sites instead of 1. And going into Rawalpindi and Islamabad all at the same time. And still there's a lot of very high pent-up demand that we have to kind of cater to in other cities.
Is the pent-up demand in small cities as well? I mean, do you see the possibilities of maybe expanding, let's say, to Gujranwala, Gujarat, Sialkot? Or is this a very big city dominated?
No, absolutely 100%. I think like we need to move into Faisalabad, Multan very, very quickly, Peshawar as well. And these guys, so if you look at basically like what's driving their growth, right? If you break it down, co-working fundamentally is just like a new way to work, right? So as long as the spaces where they're located and how they're designed and the experiences they offer, as long as they match up to whatever business you're doing, regardless of whether that's a production house, whether that's a tech company, whether that's a social marketing company, it really doesn't matter. Whether we actually have clients that are like 100 or something year old, international conglomerates that work in the shipping industry, So fundamentally, what people really need is like good, solid working spaces. And you look at any of these cities, they have like tremendous volume as far as industry is concerned. So like, you go to Faisalabad, you'd probably find like a lot of people there who are working in the agriculture sector, who are working in the textile sector. You go to Sialkot, you'll find a lot of people again in the textile sector, surgical trading as well. And absolutely all across the board, a lot of these cities are so well equipped as far as educational institutes are concerned, and technology is big in all of them. So,
I wanted to ask you this. Do you think you're attracting techie type individuals, or is your model just as applicable to somebody, let's say you mentioned Sialkot and making surgical instruments? I mean, someone who's got an office making surgical instruments, can they use your office just as easily as maybe a social media marketing house or a freelancer, for example?
Absolutely. And we were actually very surprised about this. When we initially started back in 2016, we assumed like, we will open our doors and it's all going to be like pure tech, freelancers, young entrepreneurs working in the tech industry, right? But some of the very first cohort of community members that we got at that time, a lot of whom are still with us, they were creative professionals. So a lot of them were photographers and videographers and bloggers and vloggers and all of these guys. And that was very interesting for us. And then as we've evolved as well, especially during COVID, we've gotten a lot of companies that are working in the financial industry, who are working in, again, like trading, textiles, shipping, like I said,
Why though?
chemicals.
Because I would have thought during COVID, people don't want to meet each other.
Sure, because when COVID hit, I think like a lot of these companies and a lot of very large conglomerates as well started analyzing their costs and analyzing their capital tie-up and how they could liquidate those tie-ups. And then, like, we know, like, a bunch of very large companies had just finished up like these very huge campuses for, thousands of people, and now they can't roll that back because it's all capital, and they were banking on that investment kind of paying off over the next 5 years, 10 years or so, as far as where our clients were concerned. And then eventually when people started switching over, they also realize this as well. That is something they can easily turn off and, turn on and turn off. And that, and plus the fact that especially if you're in a high growth industry. Your ability to grow is significantly sped up if you have an infrastructure partner who's kind of sorting out, that side of the business. Because otherwise, you're effectively running two businesses where you're doubling in size, which is very frequently happening in tech, but in other businesses as well. And then suddenly you have to house 100 more people in 3 months. And then do you focus on that, or do you focus on the business as
well, it's interesting you say that, because one of the issues that you face in Pakistan, for example, is, we all talk about load shedding.
Sure.
So as an individual or a company, you're busy spending half your time fixing issues like that.
Yeah.
Does the electricity come and go?
Yeah.
Does the gas come and go? Is the water here? Do I need to call a tanker? And so on.
Yeah.
Whereas your focal of your energies should actually be on your business.
Absolutely.
Which doesn't happen in Pakistan, unlike other countries.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, is this model, does it exist elsewhere as well, abroad, internationally, or is it a Pakistan kind of specific thing?
No, it's actually very, very big in a lot of developed economies, and now in developing economies as well. So, very big in India, very big in Bangladesh, very big in Europe, and US are obviously at another level altogether.
Do they do things differently to us, or is it's around the same?
It's roughly the same. So, and that's also actually very interesting, and I think that's very important to the whole entrepreneurial journey as well. Like, it has to start off with a certain level of naivety if you want to be nice, or stupidity if you want to be real. And when we started, like, we didn't really know that this concept existed, and there were like, these players out there who had already cracked it. Okay. So we kind of reinvented the wheel.
Cracked it in Pakistan, or cracked it
abroad? Elsewhere, abroad. And there were these very large conglomerates operating in North America and in Europe as well, publicly listed companies actually. And, we kind of reinvented that wheel, which was also interesting because that allowed us to really localize and contextualize it as well. But even when we did, and even, kind of keeping a pulse on what our community was looking for and how these companies were also evolving, it was interesting that we kind of landed to almost roughly around the same model that exists pretty much everywhere else in the world. And it's very popular.
Are you one of the first companies in Pakistan that's introduced this?
One of the first ones. I think like 2016 saw like 4 or 5 different players that were emerging.
Why 2016? What was happening?
I think that was like a natural evolution of the ecosystem as well. Because again, like, I think that was like 2, 3, 4 years into like, this whole incubation push that had kind of, at scale started introducing these different incubators all over, including Karachi and Lahore as well. And I think that was, I think, coincidentally how and when like a lot of these people kind of chanced on that idea. So that was interesting.
How large is this market? I mean, you said that it's international as well. What kind of money are we talking about in terms of Pakistan or internationally in this industry?
Yeah, so I'm absolutely the wrong person to ask this question, because like I will like paint you a very rosy picture, because fundamentally again, and I think like again that's a trait of kind of being one of the founders of this as well. Fundamentally, again, co-working is working, and like co-working is working for everyone, and it's like the new way to work for a lot of these companies. So we see like all corporate infrastructure potentially becoming these hubs and these ecosystems where people can kind of come in and work together. So like, if you look at it that way, the market is huge.
How young are the people who work for you? Because I'm wondering, is this a life cycle thing? That a young company comes to you with young people, and after a while they move out because they want to reach the next step, they want more space, they've made more profit. I mean, are you seeing that happen in your own organization? So
again, I think like that was a learning journey for us as well, and we're still on it. That when we initially started, we thought that co-working is probably something that works for teams up to a size of like 4 or 5, maybe 6 individuals.
In a company. Okay.
And then, after that, they'd probably have to graduate. And then we kind of, we got a rebuttal for that through, the other companies that were kind of coming in. And then we were like, hey, no, it probably, goes up to like 10 people, it's viable, and then it isn't. And then it was 20. Right now, we're hosting a bunch of companies that are more than 200 people.
Oh, wow.
They're operating out of, our own facilities. And like one of these very interesting companies, actually 2 of these very interesting companies joined us early 2020. I think mid 2020 with like 5 people each. And right now, both of them are going on to 200 plus. One is in the B2B marketplace area, and the other is in the e-commerce enablement space.
Okay.
So again, like, we're getting these,
But are you seeing any element of they come and they stay with you for a short while, and after a while they leave and they set up their own offices?
Not really. So we're actually seeing like a lot of longevity to a lot of these clients, and actually the bigger the companies, the longer the tenure in which they're operating as well. Because again, fundamentally they're kind of looking at this as their home base. These companies are incorporated at Daftarkhwan. They're operating out of there. All of their clients know them. Their international corporations, their bank accounts, all of this is operating through there.
Okay.
So and that's only happening because it makes sense. It makes economic sense, and also, like, if you could focus more on your business, why wouldn't you?
How many companies in total do you have?
We have more than 200 at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. And any big names that have gone out of Daftarkhwan's offices, and any names that we all recognize?
Yeah, absolutely. So Airlift was one of the earlier ones that started out of Daftarkhwan, and then really grew really quickly. At that point in time, we didn't have the infrastructure to be able to kind of match up to their growth, and hopefully we're solving that problem as well. Jugnu is a very very interesting startup operating these days, that's operating out of Daftarkhwan. But even the conventional in the conventional sense, AkzoNobel, the chemicals business, which is NewYork, I believe.
Yeah.
They're operating out of Daftarkhwan. Li & Fung is another like shipping company based out of Hong Kong. They're operating out of Daftarkhwan in the Lahore office. So very interesting and very varied as well.
So what are the key lessons you've learned from these companies that become so successful from your offices?
I think one of the main things that we've kind of seen looking at these really brilliant founders up close is their ability to make like really bold decisions in a very timely manner. And I think that's a very hard thing to do as well, because when you're building something and when you're, it's your creative child, you're very attached to it, and you're also kind of tunnel visioned into it as well, that, this is the thing and this has to work and I have to make it work, right? For you to be nimble strategically, so as things change, so for example, that's one thing that we saw with Airlift, for example, where they were able to kind of very quickly pivot as soon as COVID hit, from being in the mobility business to being in the quick commerce business.
Okay.
So I felt like, for better or for worse, it really paid off. And, they were able to see astronomical growth as far as that was concerned. I think another thing that we've also really learned is, especially in the early years, is absolutely no replacement for a founder really being hands-on on the business. Because we've seen other people who are coming in with a lot of capital, a lot of domain expertise, and a lot of, awareness around the industry, but not ready to kind of really get their hands dirty. And then, that eventually dies out, fades away, and that culture really translates into the team as well,
right,
as opposed to other people who are just kind of at it.
And this is universal, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the world, when venture capitalists, for example, think about investing in a company, they really want the founder there.
Yeah.
And we know recently that Twitter's founder Dorsey, James Dorsey, I think his name
James
is.
Dorsey, yeah.
He recently
Jack Dorsey,
of course. I don't know how I'm got his name, but he recently finally resigned and said, I think it's time for the next person to take over.
Yeah.
But he was a founder owner for many, many years, and Microsoft was the same. Facebook still has the same founder owner.
Yeah.
So this is seen as a very strong plus point.
Absolutely.
Within the financial markets as well.
Plus point, and actually like sometimes a bit of a requirement as well. So for example, you've seen that in a lot of these deals that happen where startups tend to get acquired by other companies or conglomerates, it's baked into the deal that the founder has to stay on for a certain amount of time. Right. So that we saw this happening with Instagram, and although it was, fairly public knowledge that, Instagram founders weren't really getting along with the Facebook vision, but they had to kind of stay on for a certain amount of time in order to kind of make it work.
Right. You recently received funding from EMPG. What's going on there? Why were they funding you? What did they find interesting about Daftarkhwan that they were interested in getting involved in your business?
Yeah. So, well, actually, we've been in touch with these guys. Imran, in particular, has been super helpful because we've been going to him for advice every now and then.
You're from Lahore, they're from Lahore.
We're from Lahore, and these guys are legends of the startup sector. They started off, from scratch back in 2003 when Zameen started, if I'm getting the dates right. But and now obviously, they're legendary and they're, all over the world. So we started kind of going to them specifically for that, to kind of, track the founder's journey, but more so because Zameen is such a key player when you think about property in Pakistan. And property is such a, key piece as far as our business is concerned, as far as co-working is concerned. So we wanted to kind of,
So natural synergies.
Exactly, natural synergies. And we were constantly going to these guys for advice, to sound out different ideas on how we could do something better, how we could move faster. And I think that kind of, conversation maybe led to something. But honestly, I think the official answer you'd probably have to get directly from the source.
Are you going to tell us how much they invested in you?
No.
Now that would have been interesting. Okay, so what are your own growth plans?
Right. So, I mean, the growth plans are very, very aggressive right now. And we're currently working on a site in Islamabad that's going to be a significant, addition to the corporate infrastructure here. And we're hoping it will really, again, keep on changing the way that people experience office spaces and, what they expect from corporate spaces as well in Islamabad and hopefully beyond as well. But by the end of the year, we're hoping to, be significantly larger than we are at the moment. So we're looking to kind of grow by, 3 to 4 times the current size.
Saad, thank you so much for your time today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.